All right, guys, so welcome to my very messy office this morning. I just wanted to take a minute. We're trying to provide good content for you guys. There's a lot of guys out there that are first-time diesel owners. They had maybe engine failure. They are looking for they're looking for some suggestions on some things as far as what we can do to help them. It may be an engine build. It may be just part sales. It may be what size turbocharger, what size injectors, doesn't matter. But we get a lot of emails throughout the day, and we try to be the best at providing good content, good answers, good service. So with that, sometimes I'm getting these questions in here, and sometimes they run into pretty lengthy emails because there's a lot of questions to be asked. It's a big decision. So instead of just answering this email and sending it out to one customer, I'm trying to make it where we can service more people, answer more questions by providing the content that we're doing here today. So that's the reason why we're doing what we're doing. It's kind of an impromptu setup right now. Sorry for the mess, but it is what it is. But the answers won't be affected by the messy office. So we have a guy named Todd here, and he has sent me an email that I'm looking at, and he's trying to decide what he should go with, whether it should be a workhorse engine that we provide. Now, our workhorses aren't limited to just our 6.4 engines. We're very well known for the 6.4 platform, but we do a tremendous amount of DURAMX and tremendous amount of CUMMINS, as well as 7.3, 6.7s platforms, all POWERSTROKE platforms. With that said, he's trying to figure out what he should go with, whether a daily driver or a workhorse. And this applies to not just the POWERSTROKE guys, but this goes for everybody, CUMMINS guys and the DURAMX guys. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and get into it. First questions, he says, he tells me, and he goes ahead and talks about what he's going to be towing and the weight that he's going to be towing. And he asks, he said, am I correct to think that the daily driver long block fits my use well? And he talks about pulling sometimes it's 15 to 20,000 pound range, but most of the time he's going to be pulling around 10,000, and he goes and tells me what he's going to be doing. Now, the big thing to remember is the workhorse is beneficial. It's a package that we put together that we've been able to reduce the price. If you were to buy these things individually, chromoly push rods, the stage 2 camshaft, the coated polyphene coated pistons, and the machining that we do in the pistons, and all these things together, if you start adding all that stuff up, then it would be a lot more expensive than if we just went ahead and bought the workhorse package together as a unit. The benefits to this are increased fuel mileage, better performance, longevity under heavier loads. The thing takes a beating. I mean, it really can it's designed for heavy loads, for a little bit higher temperatures. Because of the exhaust gas temperatures, we're able to reduce that from the stage 2 cam, the chromoly push rods. We're able to combat some of the deflection, so we're actually getting the benefit of that camshaft that we're using. The piston bowl design, as well as the coating that goes on that. There's a lot of things that come with that package. So if you're on the fence, a workhorse doesn't mean that you have to pull a load to be able to have one. I mean, you're benefiting from it all the way around. So if you can step up from the daily driver to workhorse, there's a huge gain that you're going to get with that. That being said, to answer your question, Todd, I think that that you are probably going to be better off with the given. If you can manage it, go with a workhorse. You'd be better off. I think you're going to get a bigger bang for your buck. So that's the answer to the first question. Okay, so the next question that he sends is can you provide some detail on what makes the daily driver long block more reliable than a stock long block other than the pistons? Absolutely. We don't offer, and our motto around here, stock's not an option, okay? We don't really offer a stock build, and the stage 1, and I hate that terminology, and there's reasons why, and I'm going to get into that later, but so the daily driver, we refer to that because you know exactly what you're getting on that. What makes it more reliable? Yes, machining, and the third thing would be machining. There's so much to be said for proper machining and proper engine balancing. If you go anywhere else and you're buying an engine, there are so many, you don't know, there's not a standardized way of doing this, okay? So one guy may deck the surface, one guy may not deck the surface. So if you compare your engine that you bought from a Ford Reman to a certain other manufacturer that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, and I will not call out any names, but there are many manufacturers like this, they don't surface the deck of the block, and that's extremely crucial. If you ever get a chance, look up YouTube ringing, and that's basically where you're taking two flat surfaces, mating them together because they're completely fat, and trying to pull them apart. It provides a kind of a phenomenon there that they hold together and bond. Two flat surfaces are always going to seal better. than one uneven surface and one flat surface, okay? And that's what you're doing when you're putting a head on that has been machined and a block that has not been machined. So you're always going to be better off getting a head gasket to seal. I don't care who tells you anything otherwise. That's just the facts. It's physics, okay? But our machining starts at the very bottom end because, again, and I've talked about this a lot before, but proper mainline truing and concentricity of the crankshaft main bore housing as well as the crankshaft mains, it's just extremely crucial. You're going to get uneven bearing wear, you're going to get side loading, you're going to get fretting sometimes if it's not so much fretting, but you'll get uneven bearing wear, period, across the board. And it's extremely crucial as far as the thrust bearing, making sure that that's perpendicular to the face of the crankshaft itself. It has to be so. Otherwise, you're not getting the full benefit of the bearing load that's spread evenly across the journal itself. So again, the thing that makes us different, if nothing else, and we're not talking about parts for the daily, because the daily driver is the closest thing that we could possibly say. That's our start build, right? So it does come with standard things like different pistons. It does come with standard things like a different ARP studs or something like that. But machining is what is going to make longevity for these engines. It's the only thing that's really going to make it last, because the failure points that we see were because of improper tolerancing a lot of times, and that's especially not necessarily exclusive to the 6.4. We see that a lot even in the 6.7 POWERSTROKEs, and we see that in some of the DURAMX and CUMMINS stuff as well, especially like in the CUMMINS stuff, we see that in the cylinder heads on the 6.7s. But anyway, not to beat a dead horse, but machining is your answer. Okay, so the third question, he says, is for my use, is there any quote-unquote must-have additions to the long block for longevity and reliability? Again, this is going to be one of those things that is going to be exclusive to whatever engine you're building. There's things that I would suggest on maybe a DURAMX, depending on what your application is. I'm a big advocate for main caps and for running a steel main cap on a DURAMX. There's things that I would suggest for the CUMMINS as well. For his particular application, this is a 6.4 POWERSTROKE, I would suggest valve covers and with the integrated oiling system. That's going to save a lot of problems in the long run with anything from camshaft failure due to lifter failure because of the rocker arms wearing and now our preload isn't right. So that oiling system fixes that problem. There's no two ways about it. It fixes it 100%. You don't see these problems with a 6 liter, and the reason why is because of the oiling. So if I was going to suggest anything to add, definitely the integrated oiling valve covers. So the next question that he says here is it correct that the crank runout is checked, fixed, block is blueprint board, rotating assembly is balanced, and all documentation is provided for a daily driver? Just want to be sure I'm not confusing these with the workhorse. It's not exclusive to the workhorse. Every engine that we build is going to come with documentation. Everything we're going to put out there is going to have fixed mains, all that machining. Whether you buy a daily driver or you buy a race series engine, it doesn't matter what you're doing with it. Our machine processes are going to be held to the same standard. There's different parts that we're going to machine, yes. There's different tolerances that we might go to where we might open up a clearance because of a race application in, for this guy's engine versus a daily driver. And we're going to also run maybe a different oil because of those clearances. But the requirements for the standards that are set are the same. So as far as run out, the same would be set. We're gonna make sure that that's true. So I hope that answers that question. Okay, all right. So this is question number 5. What is your recommendation? What is your recommendation on sending my long block core, having you inspect it and rebuild it and send it back for install versus just having my core sent in and send you a rebuilt motor from one of the cores you have? Is there any benefit for longevity for one option versus the other? Okay, this is a question that we get a lot. The truth of the matter is it doesn't matter because they're going to have to be qualified cores. The core that you send in, okay, perfect example. On some CUMMINS blocks, like there are certain blocks, if you're a CUMMINS guy, you know about the blocks that are notorious for cracking. We know them as code 53 blocks. We do ultrasonic testing. We typically will not build a code 53 block. And we'll tell you on the front end, just don't send me a core. I don't want you to call me 4 years from now and say, hey, I'm losing coolant off the passenger side of the block. It's just not worth it to me. I'd rather just start from a good, solid block. Same thing with the 6.4s. I'm not going to tell you the secret number on that. There is one. It's just I don't want some of the competitors to know the same thing that I struggled, and I paid a lot of money to find out the stuff that I know on that. Just trust me when I say that when I send it to you, if I'm putting my name on it and I'm putting a warranty with it, it's going to be on that one block. If you send me a block in and it doesn't meet that, I'll flat up tell you right then. And I will give you the secret to what we're telling you about. I'm not trying to make this smoking mirrors. It's just I don't want to put this stuff out there. I would rather tell you confidentially the reason why. I'll send you pictures of where the block is, but I can tell you which blocks on a 6.4 are going to crack before they do it. And that's only because I'm just the idiot that has been to bat that many times, and I've seen different things. So as far as to answer your question, it doesn't matter. It's going to have to be a qualified block. So there's really no benefit to that unless we find that your block is one that we're talking about. So this question is number 6. He says, regarding the tune on the truck, am I able to keep the tune the previous buyer had on it with your motor for warranty purposes? Do you require anything along those lines? First and foremost, we don't do tuning here. We cannot get involved with that for obvious reasons, for legal ramifications. I can tell you what'll live and what'll die. I can tell you why the tune will kill it. There is not a tune file that's sent me that I can look over. I know certain tunes because I've been in the business long enough. I've had hundreds of thousands of customers that have come in, and I can tell you typically what happens is any injection timing that takes place after 28 degrees is typically no man's land. That's when you really want to shy away from that. Bad things happen. Nothing good comes from it. You're putting extreme amounts of cylinder pressure on that rod. Rods bend, pistons crack, cranks tweak, cylinder head gaskets blow. There it is. So it's not that I'm going to deny warranty because of a guy's tune. I will tell you this: we don't cover bent connecting rods. I don't cover a piston that's melted. No different than I would a piston that would be melted from an injector that is running way too hot. That's physics. Like I said before in a post one time, at that point in time, if you can figure out how to make aluminum melt at a higher temperature, you need to call NASA. As far as that goes, we can do some things through coatings and different things like that, but as far as the anatomy of the material, we know that if you're running that tune where you're spraying for excessively long periods of time, you're going to create more heat that you're not going to actually make any more power out of, but it will cause that piston to melt prematurely. As far as this goes, the tune that you're asking about specifically, if you call me and you tell me the name of the tuner, I know a lot of them. I don't know all of them, obviously, and I can tell you whether or not what my opinion is of that, and I'll just leave it at that. So this last question is the number 8. Okay, he basically asks, what can I do, and on your end, you guys do with us to make sure that this is a good team repair with a good outcome. That's a great question. Hopefully we will not have any warranty claims, but in the event we would, I would want us all to have great communication and trust in each other for our respective pieces. I will definitely be staying on top of all the routine maintenance and saving receipts. Is there anything you and the installer will need to go over for the install, the initial startup, to ensure we all stay straight with each other and there's no issues? Okay, that is a great question. There are some things that we're constantly learning, okay? And the reason why we'll never know it all is simply because the parts that you're getting today aren't going to be the parts that you're going to get tomorrow, sadly enough. I mean, I learned things about 7.3s because of GP Sorensen winds up putting a different IPR valve that actually ramps the IPR pressure through the roof. They had a bad run of them, okay? And then a guy calls me and he's upset that his engine doesn't run right. Well, I mean, there's no end to this thing. It just depends on the tools that you're using or the parts that you're using. That being said, there's a specific thing right off the top of my head. We can make these install videos. It will be a general install. There are things that we know about the 6.4s and there are things we know about the Cummins and the DURAMX that some of the mechanics aren't going to know because we see failures all across the nation. One of which, for instance, is the 6.4 water pumps right now that guys are getting. And I'm not going to say that it's exclusive to, it's not exclusive to any one manufacturer, because it can happen to an older water pump too. And because you put a new part on, doesn't qualify that part because it's new, okay? Just because you never open the milk jug doesn't mean it's going to sour, or it's not going to, okay? There's nothing that's going to actually procure that and make sure that it's good. For instance, on the water pump, we're seeing the impellers on the water pumps being installed from the manufacturer where they're too far out, so that when the guy goes to bolt that thing up, it winds up bottoming out in the front cover. As he tightens it down, he doesn't know because he can't see it. He torques it down, he cranks the engine. As soon as he cranks the engine, what happens is the shaft strips, okay, because it's not going to stop the engine from running. That little impeller isn't strong enough for that, but it spins it and it strips it. So now he's going to go and he's going to get maybe 2,000-3,000 miles out of that engine before he actually smokes that cylinder. And the one that he'll most likely smoke is the one in the center. That means you're looking at between maybe 4 or 6, or maybe 3 and 5, and there's reasons for that, but I won't go into it. But anyway, it's going to cause excessive heat in those cylinders. When it does that, the guy's going to call and he's not going to be really happy about the whole situation because I only got 2,000 or 3,000 miles out of your engine. It was the install that screwed it up. And here's the way that you can look. For instance, I'm using this as one of 20 different scenarios that I could play out. If you would have taken that cover and you'd have put some modeling clay on it and you'd have installed it and you'd have pulled it back off and you'd have verified that there was clearances, there was clearance between the impeller and the front cover, you could have saved yourself an engine. There's nothing I can do about that. There's just so much we can do. We can make sure everything's good on our end, but I can't make sure everything's good on your end. That being said, and I'm not trying to cut anybody out, but I do care about the end user and I do care about the customer, and that's the reason why we have offered for the month of February, where we're having free shipping with some restrictions that apply. But for the most part, I think don't quote me on this, I think it's like $1,000 or something one-way shipping, and we pretty much get anybody in the United States shipped here and on the lower 48 shipped here under that. And we do that because our installers know about these things. We go over them, and not that it could be something that I could train a person and say, that water pump issue, it may not be a big deal after so many vendors that are having these issues resolve it. But something else will develop, unfortunately, because there's so many components on an engine as you're installing it. So there may be something later on where somebody had a bad run of O-rings and it winds up putting fuel in the oil. I don't know, but I'll be the first to know about it. I can tell you that when you got that many engines going out. Unfortunately, we will be the ones to know about it, and we're going to be the ones to have to address it. So that makes a big difference as far as your installer. They're just not privy to that information because they don't do as many as we do. Not that we're smarter, it's just that we got more times at bat. So I will be more than happy to share any information that I can with the guys that are installing our engine. At the end of the day, I want to make sure that we both have a successful relationship, and you have a success. And the way to do that is to make sure your engine's going up and down the road. It doesn't matter what happens. When a guy breaks down, your name's mud. He's not happy about it. It just is what it is, and I understand that. So I want to make sure that we take all precautions that we possibly can to ensure that you have what you need to go to work every day, what you need to make it to the boat ramp on the weekends, and what you need to get your family where they need to go. So I appreciate the questions. I want to make sure that I'm able to address as much as I can. There's a lot of people out there, and there's a lot of questions out there. And sometimes on our end, I apologize in advance. It gets a little bit overwhelming. We're doing the best that we can, and this is the reason for these videos. Greatly appreciate you guys' support. It means a whole lot to us. We couldn't be where we're at without you. And because of that, I'll continue, because you've afforded me the ability, you've put me in a position now that I want to give back to the guys that have given us so much. And with that, I want you to know more is coming, and a lot greater things are coming down the road. I'm really excited about them. There's a lot going on in the shop right now. It's utter chaos sometimes, and it's overwhelming. But so this is question number 7. He says the truck has an aftermarket ATS stage 3 transmission. The installer said there are no concerns there in regards to bolting up your engine, so to speak. I just want to mention that mention it in case you had any concerns or thoughts right there. You would think that I would just say, no, it's fine, go ahead. Well, there's one thing that you need to know about. And I'll get into this a little bit later. I think that, yeah, okay, so question 8 is going to cover some of this if I'm not mistaken. But one thing to make sure that you note on this is do not, under any circumstance whatsoever, ever, okay, if I can put this in red letters under here, I don't care. Do not remove any part of the engine that we provide. If it, for some reason, heaven forbid, but let's just say UPS or some shipping company wind up sending you out a manual transmission, and we had another engine that the guy was getting a manual, they got reversed because they put a different tag on it. It happens, okay? Stuff's going to happen. I'm never going to be able to control every bit of that. But, and I only tell you this because I've seen this happen before. And I've always got horror stories because I've got so much experience. I can tell you either personal experience or I can tell you from a different shop. Do not let them pull that manual flywheel off the engine and bolt on another flex plate on that engine. There's reasons why. It's extremely important, and it's here's the critical thing. You won't run into that issue on, say, a DURAMX because the bolt patterns are the same, right? You might not run into that issue on a Cummins. It doesn't really matter because it's an internally balanced crankshaft. But the 6.0 and the 6.4 you can swap the flex plates. Will it work? No. Will you be able to drive down the road? Yes. Are you going to destroy the bearings in the long run? Yep, you are. People are going to tell you, no, it doesn't make any difference. Well, there's a video floating around out there. You can look through our page, but it's about 220 grams difference. Don't do it. I don't care what they tell you. They're not the ones that have seen these failures. I've got the bearings. I can prove it. It destroys them. So it is crucial. If you look at the 6.4 flex plate, and the reason why I'm telling you this is because a lot of guys go to the junkyard and get a transmission. They go, oh, well, this is a 6.0, and the guy at the junkyard doesn't care. He just wants to sell you the transmission. So he says, well, the 6.0 bolt up and place your 6.4. Yeah, all you need to do is, I've got a converter over here. You're going to have to swap flex plates. So they pull the flex plate off, and they put a different, he's got a converter out of a 6-liter, which is a 6 lug, instead of an 8 lug on a 6.4. And he takes it and he goes, well, I'll just throw in this flex plate for you too. That way, if you buy the transmission, I'll just give you this flex plate. Well, the problem with it is there's a difference in the weights. And if you don't believe me, just look on the back of your flex plate. One has 2 weights, one has 1 weight. One has a much larger weight than the other. That makes difference. Ford's not stupid. They didn't do this stuff for no reason, okay? There's a definite need. The pistons are larger. They are of greater mass. That means they're going to, because it's an externally balanced engine, you're going to have something heavier to counteract the weight of that piston. That is the reason why the flex plate is designed with a different calibration of weight, we'll say. So don't do that. It will destroy the engine, and it's going to make you very unhappy, and it'll make me very unhappy. If it gets there to your shop and it's not, for some reason, something's not right, call me. Obviously, we're making a video because we care about you, okay? We care about the customer. We want to make sure your experience is a fantastic experience. We want you to recommend us to your friends, to the lady at the checkout line at Kroger. We want you to be extremely happy. So that's the reason why we're investing so much time into answering these questions. Pick up the phone. Don't take the mechanic's word for it. There are some fantastic mechanics out there, and I would defer to their wisdom on many things. But I don't know every mechanic in the United States. So just ask me. You paid for our engine, you're going to get our service. I'm an open book. I'm here. Use me. And let my mistakes or let my hardships and the things that I've learned work off of my dollar. Don't work off your own, right? Let me be the insurance company. So that's what I'm here for. Just call me and ask me. So, and the phone number at the bottom, 901-553-9847, or you can send us an email. You can get on chokeperformance.com and send us an email through there. So I hope that answers that question.